up, fight fans? So I'm sure you guys heard the news. Nate Diaz is now a free agent, no longer a part of the UFC. And yeah, this is what he's wanted for a very long time. He's wanted out of the UFC. He wanted to become his own boss. He wanted to do his own thing. And, it felt like it wasn't going to happen. It felt like a long time. It felt like it was just a straight up just a battle. He was on that one fight deal. Well, not even a one fight deal, but he had one fight left on his contract for a very long time. And it just seemed like he was never going to get that fight up until he did against Hamzat Chimaev. Of course, a lot of us, of the fight fans, felt like they were just trying to do Nate dirty. They were just trying to, just destroy him before he left because he just did not want to sign. I remember hearing about Nate Diaz, or not hearing about Nate Diaz, but hearing from Nate Diaz in different interviews saying that how they kept trying to get him to sign, kept getting to sign, but Nate just did not want to. Nate didn't want to be a part of the organization no more. He wanted to go try and do different things. You want to go try to do boxing. You want to go try to do jiu-jitsu matches. You want to go try just different, see what's out there. See what's out there, see what kind of money he could possibly make. And, the UFC kept just throwing him money, throwing him money for sign this. And unfortunately, unfortunately for the UFC, he just did not want to sign. So they gave him Hamzat Chimaev, who was a real problem. He's a walking destruction. He would continue. He would just go over there and run right through people. And I always felt very confident for Nate going into that fight. I knew a lot of people were writing off Nate, saying that it was just going to be a one-sided fight. But I felt like Nate would definitely be in there, mix things up because of his experience and his willingness to take on punishment and such like that. It wasn't going to be a very easy fight for Hamzat, I feel. But, a lot of people felt different. But nonetheless, so here we are. Now he is out. Now the big question is, what's he do next? Where does he go from here? Being a free man. And right now there's a lot of talks. Right now, I believe I've heard in recent news that BKFC, Bare Knuckle Fighting, is thinking about making Nate Diaz an offer. And, I believe they are partners with Triller, but I could be wrong on that. BKFC I'm talking about. So they're thinking about possibly putting their money together and try to get Nate Diaz. Would I want Nate Diaz in bare knuckle boxing? That's a tough one because I feel like, unfortunately, there's nothing against bare knuckle boxing. I actually enjoy it. I actually do see some of their fights, and some of it's actually very entertaining. But I just feel like it's not something I could see Nate do. Is it fun for Nate to do? Sure. And if the money's good, sure. But it's like, I really wish there was a bigger superstar there. Nothing against those guys. Mike Perry is a star in his own right, but I just don't feel like there's somebody over there that would grab Nate Diaz, that can grab his attention. Like say for example, like I know this would never happen, but if Conor McGregor was there, imagine those guys: Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz in a bare knuckle fighting. Oh my God, what a crazy war that would be. But nonetheless, so that's what I feel like. Nate is looking for, that kind of big paycheck and big pay-per-view numbers, big star status. But I could be wrong. Nate could actually go in there and mix things up with Mike Perry. I could see that actually potentially happening. They could write Nate Diaz a good $5-10 million, maybe even $10-15 million paycheck for a couple of fights. And who knows? Would Nate do good? Absolutely. We already know Nate Diaz has hands for days. Nate Diaz can box. Nate Diaz can do a lot of good a lot of stuff with his hands. He's been by far one of the UFC's number one strikers. And so, yeah, I could definitely see a potential him doing good. The scar tissue is a big issue, though, because we know Nate Diaz. Have you ever seen a Nate Diaz fight in recent years where he's not bleeding? Unfortunately, that's just how Nate is. The Nate has been in some wars, and that's how you've been in some wars. Nate has scar tissue just all around his eyes, his nose, everywhere. He's been busted up quite a few times. So he's been in some wars and some battles, and now he ain't gonna have no protection of the gloves to save him, to save his face, I should say. So what do you think a bare knuckle is gonna do? It's gonna damage some Nate up pretty good. It's gonna create some more scar tissue. So who knows what could happen there? It's a lot to think about, a lot to consider. But the number one that you got, everyone I'm sure is thinking about, the number one fight that everyone is pretty much almost guaranteed. Like a 99.9% guarantee it's going to happen is him versus Jake Paul. You know, because I believe Jake Paul called him out quite some time ago, and he obviously Nate Diaz was still under contract, but you know Nate had considered it and is probably still considering it, and is probably actually even wanting it because he sees what kind of numbers Jake Paul does. He sees what kind of attention Jake Paul brings, and he sees what kind of money Jake Paul brings. You know, Jake Paul is becoming a superstar in his own right. You know, he is doing it his own way in his own style, and he is making the money, and that's something that Nate Diaz definitely wants to be a part of. So I could see Jake Paul and Nate Diaz, you know, doing a big blockbuster pay-per-view sometime next year, sometime in 2023. I feel like that is the most lucrative fight for Nate Diaz outside of the UFC. You know, I don't see, honestly, I do not see Nate Diaz staying outside the UFC for very long because he still has a lot of money he could still make there as well. So I don't feel like he's going to take on just anybody. You know, he's not just going to sign with Bellator and fight like guys like AJ McKee or Patricio Pitbull or somebody like that. You know, nothing against those guys. They're all great, you know, stars, but it's just I don't see Nate Diaz going after something like that. I see him going after a Jake Paul just because of the build and just because of the, you know, the money it brings to the table. I could see if maybe Anderson Silva wants to do something and the respect that they both have for each other, that's a potential as well. So there's other possible small potential fights out there. It all really depends on Nate Diaz, you know, because I feel like he's trying to make that money. You know, he's trying to bring in that paper. So that's one way of looking at it and putting it. So I could see it being mostly for Jake Paul. That's just my personal opinion. I don't see anybody else. Outside of that, I could definitely see Nate Diaz going back to the UFC in 2024, signing for a big contract because I do feel like he's going to bring in a lot more fan base and a lot more attention with this possible Jake Paul fight and maybe another fight that he could have. Like I said, BKFC, Anderson Silva. I'm sure maybe somebody might sign him with a Bellator fight against Michael Venom Page. That would be interesting as well. You never know. But nonetheless, I could see a lot of potential there. And I can see UFC definitely wanting Nate Diaz back because Nate Diaz brings in a lot of fans. He brings in a lot of money. He is a big, massive superstar. And of course, who does not want that Conor McGregor trilogy? We all want it. We all been wanting to see it, dying to see it. It has to happen. It has to happen. Definitely before these guys get too older because they are getting up there in age. You know, this fight happened back in 2016, I believe, or could be wrong. Yeah, say about 2016. Around that time frame. I believe it was in, I want to say it was in March 2016 and then August 2016. I could be wrong on that, but definitely feel like that's the right number right there. So yeah, guys, look at it. It's already been 6 years. 6 years, and next year we're gonna be going in towards that 7 year mark. Going to be going near towards the 7 year mark. Sorry, I can't even do math for a second. But nonetheless, I do feel like Nate Diaz is definitely going to come back to the UFC. I do feel like Nate Diaz is going to be back in the UFC. He's just going out there doing his own thing for a while, just to probably box Jake Paul. And who knows, maybe that's all he wants to do. Because maybe that he'll probably make the most money he's ever made outside of the UFC, even including the UFC. Never know. That's what he wants to do. But guys, let me know what you guys think. Let me know where you feel Nate Diaz is going to go. Let me know what you feel like Nate Diaz is going to do. Let me know in the comments, guys. Like, subscribe, hit that notification button, guys. And I'll see you guys in the next video.